Hi there, thanks for joining us at I Think I'm Gonna Uke. My name's Tony, and I'll be teaching you today about the seventh chords. By seventh chords, technically they're called dominant sevenths, but you don't need to worry about that. We'll just call them seventh chords. There are other chords that are called major seven, but we're not going to cover those today. So in today's lesson, we're going to cover all the different seventh chords for the ones that you commonly hear in a lot of different songs, especially the ones that you'll come across in a lot of music, or if you're learning a new song. So whenever some players, like especially beginners to ukulele, when they hear seventh chords, sometimes they get a little bit nervous. They feel like it's more difficult, but it's not. It's just a chord. So just consider whether it's called an A7 or a C7. They're just other chords. They're other chord names. They're not that difficult. And in just a few minutes, you'll find out most of them are pretty easy to play. And when you'll come across them a lot, especially between chord or chord changes. You might hear a seventh chord, or it's a way to kind of add a little bit of flavor or style at the end of a measure. If you look up like guitar chords or ukulele chords or a chord chart, you'll notice a little seven. So the dominant seventh or the seventh chords, that you'll see those noted with the chord letter and then the number 7. So if you're looking at a chord chart, actually I have a link in the description below for a chord chart if you need one. If you're looking at a chord chart, you can notice the difference between like a C7 and a C major 7, because the major 7, it'll have a different notation. It'll say like M, like a capital M with a 7, or MAJ for 7. If you're just learning the ukulele, or maybe you're new to music, you might not have encountered or even heard of seventh chords. But after you kind of learn how to play a few, you'll start to notice, your ear will pick up hearing seventh chords in a lot of songs, and you'll be able to catch on faster when you're learning new songs. So when you hear about seventh chords, don't get worried or nervous or anything. They're really just names after all. They're just new kinds of chords that we're going to learn today. So you probably already learned the major chords, like a C major, a G major, an A major, an F major, a D major. So today we're going to dive into the seventh chords that go along with those. So let's get into it. Grab your uke, tune it up. If you need help, click the link above, and let's get started. All right, so let's learn our very first seventh chord. Now similar, if you've already learned other major chords like a C major or an A major, the thing that makes the ukulele so fun is that a lot of the chords are pretty easy to play. So for example, we'll start with the A, or the A7 actually. So if you remember the A major, which is your first finger on the 3rd string on the 1st fret, and your second finger on the 4th string on the 2nd fret, there's your A major. Now A7 is very similar. All we really have to do is just pick up that second finger. So we're just having our first finger on the 3rd string on the 1st fret. There's an A7. It's that easy. So you can switch from an A. The next one we'll learn is the C7. So a C major, hopefully you all remember. A C major, your 3rd string on your 3rd finger on the 1st string on the 3rd fret, there's your C major. And a C7, we're going to play with our 1st finger, but it's actually the very 1st string on the 1st fret. So you can try it again. Play the C major and switch to C7. There you go. Now the A7 and the C7 for sure are the easiest. The next one we're going to learn is the G7. Now if you remember the G major, and I already kind of showed you an example earlier, but if you remember the G major, so the G7 is really kind of, if you look at your fingers on a G major where they kind of make a triangle or an upside down triangle shape, the G7 is we're just going to flip that shape around, where now we're going to use our 1st finger on the 2nd string on the 1st fret, our 3rd finger on the 1st string on the 2nd fret, and our 2nd finger on the 3rd string also on the 2nd fret as a G7. Now this one does take a little bit of practice when you change from a G major to a G7. So that for sure takes a little bit of practice to get where your fingers feel comfortable with that. But you'll notice changing from the major chord to the 7th the seventh chord, that happens a lot. So you definitely want to practice switching from like an A major to an A7, a C to a C7, a G to G7. Definitely practice those chord changes, because in the song, or any song really, like those changes are quicker than other changes, like from a G to a C, for example. So it does take a little bit of practice, but that's the fun part. You can practice. Or the next seventh chord we're going to learn is the E7. So the E7 is a little bit different shape than the E major chord is. But for the E7, you put your first finger on the fourth string on the first fret, your second finger on the third string on the second fret, and then your third finger on the first string also on the second fret. There's your E7, like that. All right, now those are probably the easier ones. The next two that we're going to learn are a little bit more challenging, are the B7 and the D7. So if you haven't, both the B7 and the D7, you have to bar the second fret. So don't worry if you're not that great or you're just not that practiced yet at barring. I have the thing that I often teach people is, if you're having trouble using the soft, kind of the soft side of your finger to bar the whole fret, try using the very side edge of your finger, because it's harder on the side. So you might have to like pull your elbow in a little bit, and you kind of pinch. So you're using the side of your finger, and then you can get a lot more tension down if you want to try that. Now hopefully after more and more practice, you'll be able to bar with the soft part of your finger here. All right, so for the B7, we're going to bar the second fret. And when you're barring, like I mentioned before, you might have to change the position of your thumb. So your thumb's right in the center of the back of the neck on your ukulele. So that way you can get more tension when you're pinching. And definitely double check that you're barring all the strings. They should have a nice clean tone. Like you shouldn't have dead or muted strings. And there shouldn't be any buzzing sound like that. Because if you hear something like that, usually your finger's right on the fret bar, and you don't want it there. You want put your finger right in the middle, so you get that bright tone. All right. So for the B7, you do have to bar the second fret, and then put your second finger on the third string on the third fret. The B7. You hear that a lot because it's a real common chord, especially in more traditional Hawaiian music. All right, the last one we're going to learn today is the D7. So also you do have to bar for the D7 chord. Now it's similar when you're playing the D major, like that. Or if you have fat chubby fingers, you can press down the second, third, and fourth string as an option or alternative to play the D major. But when you play the D7, you do have to bar the second fret, and then you take your second finger and you put it on the first string on the third fret. So if you can play a B7, you should be able to play a D7 without any trouble. And same thing, like vice versa. Like if you can play a D7, you can play a B7. All right, so let's review those seventh chords. So we have the A7. Now strum a few beats to kind of get the sound of it. We have the C7, we have the G7. Now, if you're changing from G7 to E7, it's very simple. You just have to move your first finger to the fourth string on the first fret. All right, now the next two are the tricky ones. They're the B7, so you bar the second fret, put your second finger on the third string on the third fret. There you go. There's the B7. And then the D7, you can still pinch that second fret, keep it barred, and then play the first string on the third fret. Now there is kind of like one minor note, like if you're looking at chord charts, or if you're looking at a song that you're trying to play, sometimes you might see a D7 where they'll play it a different way, where they'll just use their second finger on the second string on the second fret, their first finger on the fourth string on the second fret. They might play a D7 this way, but technically that's not a D7, but you can, if you can't bar and do this, the thing you can do until you can get to that point where you feel comfortable is you could play a D7 like this in a pinch. So with a little bit of practice, you can add these to kind of your repertoire and you can play a lot more songs now. Now, if you've enjoyed this lesson, feel free to click the like and the subscribe button. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you can find out when we post new videos. And if you have any questions or anything, just leave a comment below.